Vols are coming to town as 12-point favorites. Vandy must improve their tackling to have a chance.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. It's fall week, and it is that time of the year. Vandy opens up as 12.5-point underdogs. That line may have shifted since I wrote that, but they welcome the Vols to First Bank Stadium as double-digit underdogs nonetheless. South Carolina and LSU have exposed major weaknesses, and Tennessee's fully capable of attacking those weaknesses. So that is the challenge for the Commodores this week. But to improve that, game plans must be on point, and most importantly, really, tackling must improve, because it's been pretty bad the last couple of weeks. It's kind of gotten worse, and I think a lot of it has to do with fatigue and things like that. So tackling is going to matter in this game, okay? Dylan Sampson is as good of a running back as I've seen. Rocket Sanders is proof that, hey, if you have a really good running back against a team that's kind of tired and beat up, you're going to be able to have success on the ground. LSU proved that as well, that if you don't tackle, then, well, you're going to be in trouble. So this game is going to be kind of make or break for Vandy. They can get to that 7th win. They have a chance to also keep Tennessee out of the college football playoff potentially. So they got a chance to do some things with Tennessee, because there's a lot on the line for the Vols. And when they come in, they honestly, they have all the pressure. And I think that shouldn't go without mentioning as well. Tennessee comes in with all the pressure. They have to win. They have to win to get in the college football playoff. Vandy's already clinched a bowl. That's house money already. That was house money weeks ago against Auburn when they clinched, right? They are in a bowl, and after last season, a bowl game is phenomenal. So if they go 6-6, that's a massive success considering where they were a year ago. So for Vandy, it's house money. So here, there's going to be some keys there, and I think that to win this game, the mindset, and I'll dive more into the mindset probably on a later episode, but, the tackling has to, that's probably the most glaring thing that I've seen the last couple of weeks is the tackling defensively. And you have to make them earn it. You have to be there. You have to make plays in space, because Tennessee is going to force you to do that. What a Josh Heupel offense forces you to do is they spread you way out. They create all this space for their receivers, and they sling it around. Nico Iamaleava, I think I got that right. Nailed it. He's really good at throwing quick, getting the ball out of his hands, getting the ball out to space. He's become more comfortable as the season goes on. Earlier in the season, had Vandy got them in week 2 or 3, I might be saying something differently about Nico. But right now, he's in a pretty good rhythm right now, and he's got some things figured out. I think still, as a freshman, there are things that can still get him this year. But for the most part, I think he's comfortable when he gets into a rhythm that he can catch, throw, and whatever. And for that rhythm to be broken, which you're going to have to tackle. They're going to get the ball in space. You're going to have to break down. You're going to have to tackle. Okay, because if you don't tackle, they're going to get big chunks of yards. That's just what's going to happen. And what LSU was able to do was they were able to throw passes. A lot of their passes that they completed were under five and under, and then they got yards after the catch. There was a few deep over routes that they were able to hit wide open space, but and that a lot of that's because, again, one guy would catch it and get loose, and everyone have to kind of cinch down to get it, or the running back was just running free too. So when you get there, and here's the thing though, like I think against Alabama, They did a really good job of tackling against Auburn. They did a really good job of tackling in space. They got off blocks against Texas. Didn't start off that way, but I think as they closed down space, as they were completing short passes and breaking tackles, they closed down that space and was able to make those plays before those receivers would be able to catch, turn, and run. So they got better throughout the course of that Texas game. Unfortunately, it was too little too late, and Texas was able to hang on to their lead. So tackling, it's a base fundamental of football, honestly. And if you can't do that, you don't really have much in the tank. And teams can gain momentum, right? Just think of this. Just think of this when it was happening to Vandy, when they were breaking tackles and Diego Pavia was doing his thing. Just think about the momentum it got for the offense. I mean, just think as they were moving the ball down the field. Just think back to that Alabama game, okay? And Diego Pavia, they had him dead to rights, okay, several times in the backfield. Dead to rights, no gain, punt, and that game's probably totally different. Well, he breaks 2 or 3 tackles, and he pops ahead for a first down, keeps the drive going. And as you keep the drive going, if you keep a drive going in a manner of which you catch, break tackles, or your running back is stopped for 2 yards but gains 6, those type of drives where you're just building and building and building, that big play is going to happen. Okay. And you can either be on the receiving end of that big play, or you can be on the delivering end of that big play. And patience can get you there, and, gaining yards after contact, gaining yards after catch, gaining tough yards in general can get you that momentum. And for Tennessee, they thrive on that. Josh Heupel's teams thrive on that. When the momentum is down, when they have to earn it, when they have to slog through a long drive after long drive after long drive, it wears on them. And they stop being as crisp, and you close down space on them. They're not patient. And Arkansas, I think when Arkansas beat them, they were able to do that. When they struggled with Oklahoma a little bit, I think they were just able to disrupt their rhythm. And, they ended up pulling that game out because Oklahoma couldn't move the ball either. But I think their defense at times disrupted Tennessee's rhythm by tackling, by making them snap the ball over and over and over again. The key to a Josh Heupel offense is quick plays, 6 plays or less. And 6 plays is considered a long drive in a Josh Heupel offense. They want to move the ball. All right. His best offenses were those Hendon Hooker offenses where they were just bam, 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 down the field, score. Bam, 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 down the field, score. It was that quick, right? They were able to hit chunk play, shot over the top, touchdown, right? They were able to do those kind of things. And if you can prevent them from doing those kind of things, limit the big plays, that's how you can help yourself. And so tackling. It's been so bad, I'm spending an entire segment on just the fundamental skill of tackling, right? It's been such a glaring weakness that I just, you have to plan for it. You have to intentionally do it. And it's a mindset thing, right? Your fundamentals break down when you're tired, when you're fatigued. That's just a fact. That's not a excuse for anything. That's just a fact. That happens, and you have to overcome that. And the great teams do, and the great teams have depth. Vandy doesn't have any depth right now. Their roster's just not quite there. They're getting there, but they're just not quite there. So tackling. It's important. You have to tackle. You have to make those plays in space. You have to prevent. You have to shut down that space. You have to prevent them from getting in on you. So it's one of those things where you're just going to have to, you're just going to have to intentionally do it. You're going to have to, close that space and get off a block and make a tackle, right? It's going to be a one-on-one situation. They're going to have 2 receivers out there over your 2 defenders, and you're going to have to, at some point, stop that, because if you can make those plays, Tennessee won't throw those all the time. They won't throw those fast screens out there. They won't throw those hitches if you don't give them the space. If you start tackling their fast screens, they will stop throwing them. Now you have to be mindful of a pump and go, but again, they won't be able to do those kind of things. You frustrate that offense, and next thing you know, they try to push the ball downfield. Boom, takeaway, right? You take away what they want to do, and they want to go fast, they want to go short, and they want to break tackles and move, right? Their best offense is hand the ball to, hand the ball to Sampson and let him break 2 tackles and get 12 yards. Let him chunk his way down the field just like that. And he will start to wear on you and wear. He did it against Georgia. And now Georgia was able to adjust and figure out ways to stop him. But he would, early in that game where you thought Tennessee was gonna pull that upset, well, it really wasn't really an upset because Tennessee was ranked higher, but you know what I mean? They were going to be able to pull that big road win against Georgia. They weren't able to because Georgia figured it out. They started making plays. They started tackling in space, and that frustrated Tennessee, and they couldn't function anymore. Their offense became way off rhythm, way off kilter, and Georgia was able to take advantage of that. So Vandy can do the same thing if you just tackle. So that's the first part of the game plan. Okay, this is a little bit more complicated of a game plan, but I think tackling is the number one thing, and you just got to be able to effectively do it, and that's the bottom line. And but again, part of that is pressuring and closing down space. We'll talk about the more intricate details of the game plan here next. All right, this episode is presented by FanDuel, or actually by Gametime. FanDuel's later. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. Makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. That's right. And Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So here's what you need to do. Look on the app, see what's going on, see what you want to do. And you can do it last minute too. That's the beautiful thing about it. And the curation of it just makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Even last minute, you can find great deals thanks to Gametime Picks. They're always looking out for you. All in pricing. If you toggle this feature on, it shows you the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so there's no surprises. Like, I always use this example because it's ridiculous. If you're going to a Yankees game and you get obstructed view seats, there's no excuse for that. You see the app, you see it in the app before you buy. That's the great thing about it. And then they had the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So here's what you do. You take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and it's right here down below. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. If you're listening on the audio side, that's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Well, it's definitely game time for sure. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. I certainly appreciate that. And make sure you go and check out Creve Hall Bagel. It's the best bagels you'll eat, man. They're sourdough bagels. I had never been one for bagels throughout the course of my life. Bagels just never did it for me for a long time. I was like, this is just, I don't know. I couldn't. And then we try my friend over at Believe in Badgers, one of his college friends, Ben, who's now the owner of Creve Hall Bagels, opened up this bagel shop in Creve Hall. And so I gave it a try because, we had mutual friends. We had a mutual friend, and he's like, dude, you got to try this, man. And I did. And I'm glad I did because it's gluten-free. My child is gluten-free. He has a gluten allergy. So it's nice to be able to get him something as well and get him to enjoy it. They have anything you want, any taste you have, any preference you have as far as bagels go, they have it. It's all on sourdough. They have all kind of schmears, which is cream cheese. They have all kind of bagels. They have a variety, and they have really cool drinks too if you're into that. So make sure you check out Creve Hall Bagel, man. They're so good. Ben is the man, dude, and he's making a second location. So if you live in the east side of Nashville, there it is, Creve Hall Bagel. You will not regret it. Also, if you need a second listen after you get done listening here as you're crunching on your bagel, make sure you check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job. The squad is going to be intense this week, right? Lots of action happened this past weekend. I'm sure the squad is going to be, let's just say interesting. All right. Let's just say interesting. So anyway, that's you need to check that out. And then Locked On Ole Miss, Stephen Willis, if you need to listen there, that show's amazing too as well. So anyway, talking about game plan as we roll on here. All right, talking about tackling, because like the last two games, tackling has been awful, right? Couldn't tackle Rocket Sanders, couldn't tackle in spaces, couldn't tackle Lenora Sellers against South Carolina. That game got out of hand because of, the deterioration of our ability to tackle against LSU. After the first drive, tackling became a major issue. Couldn't get the back down. They would, it was at least 5 yards after contact on every play, just about. Nussmeier was able to wiggle away from some sacks, things like that. So tackling was a major issue. So that's got to be the thing that's looked at the most. That's got to be, if you're going to beat Tennessee and you can't tackle, that's just not going to happen. So you have to figure some things out in that regard. But I think the game plan also against LSU was probably a little conservative. I don't know if it was a game plan coming in or the game plan that they adjusted to throughout the game. But it just seemed like, and it might have been something they adjusted during the game, because it seemed to have gotten a little more conservative. I think there was way too much space available to LSU, especially on the perimeter. And I think that probably with the athletes they have out there on the perimeter, that probably led to some of the tackling issues, because you catch turn and there's nobody there, and you're able to get going forward and have that forward momentum. It became problematic. And you can't sustain being conservative in this day and age. Like, you have to, it's almost like you gotta close down the space. You gotta force them to try to beat you vertically on a lower percentage throw, or you have to force them to get really creative to beat you in the run game. Defenses have constricted Vanderbilt now because we have been ineffective in the passing game. We've been able to buy ourselves time, but defenses have been able to restrict that space for us, for our offense. And so it's worked. And Vandy has the athletes to be able to do that. They can do that. They just have to. All right. They constricted space in all of their wins. They played hyper aggressively in all their wins. And they've tackled well in just about all their wins. They've tackled better than the other games, and they tackled better just overall. I'm sure there's some drives in every game where you're never going to be 100% on tackling, but you better make more tackles than you miss type scenario, and that's what Vandy did in their 6 wins, and that's what they haven't done in their 5 losses, and that's been the key defensively for them. They can't tackle. They have coverage breakdowns. They're giving up too much space. They're in the loss to Georgia State, there was a coverage breakdown. There's still some miscommunication on the back end with some of the transfer guys, where you're just like, you look and somebody's wide open, and you got 2 guys on one, and you're like, okay, that's not supposed to happen. Did he get the call correct, or was it communicated? Did he go rogue? Like, there's a lot of different possibilities, but nonetheless, you look at it and say, okay, well, this has got to be tightened up. The communication's got to be on point. Tennessee's going to force you to do that because they put guys out there on an island. They spread you out. They create space for themselves. That's how they're so effective. That's how they're so explosive, because they create that space and they take advantage of that space. And they take advantage of teams not being apt enough to be able to cover that space. And they end up, you break one tackle and you're gone. The teams that have beat Tennessee are the teams that tackle well in space. Georgia typically tackles well in space. Right now, they typically have Josh Heupel's number. right? The other game they lost, Arkansas did a really good job of tackling in space that night. I don't know that they've done a good job of that consistently, but at home, at night, super motivated against Tennessee, they did a good job. And that limits Tennessee. And so what you have to be able to do, and what Josh Heupel likes about this Vanderbilt team and what he thinks is a problem that the Commodores can present, is the fact that usually they are aggressive. Usually they tackle well, and they've been able to tackle well in space. Usually they're able to constrict the space enough to be able to force teams out of what they want to do primarily. And against LSU, for some reason, they weren't able to do that. So, it's got to be. I think with Vanderbilt, they just got to, at this point, they're playing with house money anyway. They just got to live and die. Clark Lee's just got to live and die with, hey, we're gonna tighten down, we're gonna constrict this space, and we're gonna come after Nico because he's a freshman. We're gonna force him to make some quick decisions with defenders in his face, with hands in the passing lanes, and we're gonna force him, if he wants to get the ball out quick, we're gonna have guys right there. We're gonna have guys right there ready to make a tackle, and we're gonna force him to go play after play after play after play if they want to score. Now, teams like this often get impatient, and it doesn't usually go well. They usually end up forcing something into a window they shouldn't be making a throw to, and it usually comes out going the other way. And Tennessee's been fortunate in those situations that they've been able to kind of, with their defense, been able to kind of get themselves out of that. Against Georgia, they weren't. And so, against a team like Vandy, who's hungry to spoil some fun for Tennessee, that could be something that you look at and go, okay, that's not so great if you're a Tennessee fan. That's going to be a problem for us. That's going to be, that's going to cause a lot of issues moving forward if they can't figure that out. But if Tennessee can figure out and take what the defense gives them, play after play after play, if they can learn how to score and be patient enough to score on 10, 11, 12 play drives, and Vandy's able to do that, then hey, have at it. But Josh Heupel also said Vandy plays really good complementary football, and we'll tell you what needs to happen there. It's Game Plan Tuesday. We're going to continue on with that. We're going to flip over to the offensive side of the ball next. All right, FanDuel. Yeah, get ready to take on the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, right? You can also take on college football action, really. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back. I don't think I told you guys earlier, but if you can tell from the sidebar over here that it is Game Plan Tuesday, right? This is where we install the game plan. We talked about what happened last week. We put that to bed. Wash your hands of it. Now it's on Tennessee. We put in the game plan, and then we're going to look at different aspects of that game plan, and then tell you exactly what needs to happen. We're also going to cross it over with Eric Kane. So as you're stuffing your face with turkey, you can listen to me and Eric Kane go on about Tennessee versus Vandy, because I'm sure that'll be fun. Then, of course, the SEC squad, too. I plan on joining that to make fun of Stephen Willis and to make fun of I don't know who else I'm going to make fun of. There was a lot of stuff that happened, but it'll be fun nonetheless. So game plan on offense, right? We switch over to offense because complementary football is important if you're going to be able to get Tennessee off kilter. If you're going to have a chance in this, the offense has to find some control. Now, that's a tricky thing because control is something that they haven't had a whole lot of lately. All right. And some of that is Pavia's taken some hits, and he's not the same Diego football he was at the beginning of the year. He's got a busted rim, his tires leaking air, his door panels dented in, one of the side view mirrors is knocked completely off, and the alignment's terrible. The back bumper and the front bumper are dented pretty badly. The front bumper's really dented. Some of the, it's just that car that just looks like it's been through demolition derby. That's Diego Pavia right now, right? He's banged up, and he just, honestly, he just doesn't look the same. And I was curious about how much he could take as far as being able to be effective. He's a tough dude. I know he's okay. He's not a soft guy, and this is not any attempt to say that Diego Pavia is soft. This is every bit of your body can only take so much, and his body can only take so much, and he runs like a running back, and that affects you a little bit. And so we tried a little bit of 2-quarterback system. I don't think, honestly, we went to it enough, right? I think Nate Johnson does have something to offer. He's explosive, man, and he can run the offense. Like, he really can. So I don't know. And Diego Pavia has too much pride for this. So it'd have to be somebody saving him from himself. But at some point, we've got to say, okay, at what point does Diego Pavia have diminishing returns as far as his ability to be effective? Okay, at what point do we need to increase reps for Nate Johnson just so we can get a little bit of explosive reprieve onto the field? And a guy that I think is capable, because he was legitimately competing for the starting job. It wasn't a slam dunk in training camp. The only reason I think Pavia became a slam dunk as training camp wore on is because he had a far superior knowledge of the system, having played in it for the previous 2 seasons, right? I think all things equal, if they were both brand new to the system, I'm not so sure Diego Pavia is the guy. But knowledge makes a huge difference, because you can anticipate things. You know how it's going to go. You know how it's going to look. You're prepared. Like, he wasn't caught off guard when he pulls the ball and there's 2 guys right there ready to tackle him, and he knows, okay, I got to put a move and split these 2 guys. Like, he knew what he was going to do before the play, which is also very valuable. That saves a lot, and I think that gave him the upper hand, because he's able to make more plays now because he can anticipate, whereas Nate Johnson, not quite as much, right? Nate Johnson can get out of things with his athleticism, but he doesn't have the same anticipatory skills and the same. He doesn't have capital A anticipation like quarterback school JT O'Sullivan likes to say. But nonetheless, there's got to be, control has to look different, right? You have to figure out ways to move the ball. You were stumped against LSU because your main event is banged up, and he's not the main event anymore. He's not somebody that can create space for himself as effectively as he could earlier in the season. So you got a little bit stumped there, and I think they hit a roadblock, and they just weren't sure what to do, and they weren't sure if taking Pavia out was the right move. Like, I get why they didn't. I get why they stuck with him, because he's the unequivocal leader of the team, probably one of the gutsiest players in college football. But at some point, you just got to pull the trigger, and you just got to say, okay, hey, this is how we have to operate. And Diego he'll be okay with that, because it's what's best for the team. But we have to operate under those conditions, because we cannot sustain like that. Because Diego Pavia I love him to death, but he's just not good enough as a passer to take over a game as a passer. He's good. He can do some things, but he's just not. You're just not going to see him take over a game from the pocket. You're just not going to see it. And that's totally normal. That's totally okay. That's who he is. And you play to that. But, when you look at him and how he operates, he's just, again, you got to find ways to control. You got to find ways to incorporate other guys. You got to get the ball out quick. Screens are good. Finding ways to manipulate protections, to be able to allow Diego to make some throws that he is capable of making, like throws where you can get him out on the edge, things like that. Those things can happen. But, as far as being able to go like they're going, it's just not going to work. Right. They got to find other ways to move the ball. They've got to, offensive line play has got to be better. And I think that, teams teeing off on Diego Pavia and knowing that he's not as much of a threat throwing the ball, I think that helps defenses. And I think that's helped the last two defenses. So they just have to adjust and relieve that pressure of themselves, because teams are loading the box now. They're saying, okay, beat us through the air, and we can't. And that's the next layer. That's the next step that Tim Beck and them have got to figure out. How do you progress now that teams are challenging you to beat them through the air? Is it Nate Johnson? I don't know. Like, is it just, hey, just survive and just regroup? I don't think that's the answer, but you just got to figure it out. That's the question you have to answer. Okay, what can we do now that teams are kamikazing our mesh points? They're tightening down space and they're loading the box on us, making it impossible for our offensive line to call protections and to protect. Right? Earlier in the season, they weren't getting these loaded boxes. They just weren't, and now they are. So you got to figure out ways around that, and you just got to find an answer, and that's the key. What those answers are, we'll discuss on a later episode, because we are out of time. But that's going to do it for us here. Thanks for listening. But just know this: if you don't take anything else away, tackling is important in football. It's a fundamental skill. Vandy should try it sometime. Be good. Be safe. Get ready for Thanksgiving. Hopefully, if you're still in school, you're enjoying your last day of school before Thanksgiving break. And we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down.